recording this on my phone, so I had to take that call. So where was I at? My aunt, I did that, and then so at this point we're looking at a live donor. So since she was in Flint, Michigan, and I was in New Orleans, we knew we were the same blood type. She would go to her doctor, and I went to my doctor, and we had to do just basically a basic physical. Well, she had to do just a basic physical, and I had to do so I did lab tests and she did lab tests, and we took blood and we had to send our blood samples in because we wanted to do it at Baylor. Of course, again, like I said, I wanted to do it at Tulane because I didn't want to leave where I was at. It was going to be inconvenient for me but not for everybody else, but I didn't want to leave where I was at, but still. So I sent all my stuff into Baylor. She sent hers in. I think I even sent some tubes into Tulane so that I could make sure to get on the list at Tulane Hospital, because I would, even if our kidneys didn't, there has to be like 3 cross-match alleles in order for you to get a transplant, and that doesn't have to be. They would say that's the best. Not just blood type, but those 3 cross-match alleles. And so I was making sure to get on the cadaver list, which is the dead donor list, and the live donor. So if anybody dies, I'd be on the list. And there were probably like thousands of names before me. I think Baylor was higher than Tulane. I would have gotten a transplant sooner from Tulane than I would have Baylor. And the reason we also chose Baylor was because my dad's cousin had also was a transplant doctor there. He did pancreas, liver, and I want to say he did kidneys. He does transplants, and his and so he was actually going to be there, and he could be like, no, don't do that. Yes, do this. No, he didn't have hands in because I believe that's unethical, but he did, have a say as to, no, you can push this through. That's okay. She can handle this. She can't handle that. Stuff like that. But like helping to speak for me in such circumstances, and basically executing at what's the best for me. And so my aunt on my father's side, my aunt Stephanie, we were basically looking at her kidney because another aunt, my mom's older sister, was like, she was so she could give to anybody. And so she was like, you can have my kidney. Like, I'm like, all these people are just giving out kidneys. Like, it's cups of sugar. And so she was like, you can have my kidney, but she wanted to basically look at my dad's side before she looked at she would be the last resort because the disease is actually on my mom's side of the family. So we go through that, and as I'm going through all this testing and making sure we have everything we need at Baylor and we're set up and we're doing all this, I'm just getting weaker and weaker, and I'm like getting tired. Like, I'm getting so tired and I'm getting so weak that like I couldn't even smile anymore. And I'm a person that almost always had a smile on my face. That was just what I was, people knew me as, like, she's always got a smile on her face, bright, jovial. And I just I couldn't even smile. The muscles in my face would hurt. I couldn't even smile. I'd crack jokes and people would think I was like being serious because I can be kind of dry and sarcastic. And they were like, oh, So it was just a whole different thing. Some people, I was really, and I'm also a straightforward, direct person. So I usually try to say it in like a sarcastic or tone, or just like more of funny tone so people can take it in more. And I was just more direct and like, I don't care. I was just that tired. Like, when I get tired, I don't care for all the extra. I'm just getting straight to the point and I'm saying what I need to say. So some people are like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, I have to have a transplant. I am tired. I am worn out. I am just trying to make it through my day. And there was so many times I was just like, God, just let me make it through the day. I was crawling. When I got home, I just took off clothes and just lay down. I just took off clothes. It was just, and I couldn't even, and the funny part about it is I'm so tired, I couldn't even sleep. I had insomnia out of this world. I would get off of work at like, and so that's what ended up, I would get off of work at like 11, 12. It just depends because I usually close. And so I would get off of work 11. I would be home probably about 11, 12. And after that, I would just be like, sitting up, watching TV, eyes wide open, like, because I couldn't go to sleep. But I got an 8 o'clock class in the morning, and I'm finally, or I'd be in the bed just like looking at the ceiling because I'm like, I can't go to sleep. I want to go to sleep. I want to go to sleep pretty bad, but I couldn't go to sleep. And I was like a consistent, worn out, tired mess. And I would be like, by the time I would finally get to sleep, it would be like 4 in the morning, sometimes 6 in the morning. I'd have to get up, and I have to go get my like 9 o'clock class. I'd have to be up by 8 to go to my 9 o'clock class. And there was this one, and that was that one class. I would have a pop quiz in that class every morning, and then some of it, a lot of those pop quizzes were extra that would go toward your. I am so surprised I got an A in that class because I would miss just about every quiz. I may have made like one or two. The rest of I was missing them suckers. I missed them quizzes. I missed those quizzes because I could not get up. I was so tired and so worn out, but I just kept like, it felt like I was walking, but it felt like I was crawling in my body, just trying to take one step at a time, just like, woo. And there would be some days that's why I was just going out at times, just going out and hanging out because I couldn't go to sleep. So I'd be out. That's sometimes why I smoked some weed, because I could not go to sleep. I had such bad insomnia that I like got me a little purple pipe and was smoking at night to try to just go to sleep, to try to get some sleep. Because those things would help me get sleep and help me get rest that my body needed, but it just wouldn't let me do it. And I was like, I need sleep, but it was like, I can stay up. I gotta stay up. It was just it was a lot going on, and it was an intense, rough time. And so as I got tired, as I got worn out, finally school ended, and I had went back home, I think immediately, so I could come here, get tested, see what I had to do, get on to basically like get my transplant going, because what I had found out was me and my aunt both had the same blood type, yes. And we also, at the end of our test, had we had 2 out of the 3 matches. And it was almost on the third one, but we had like 2 out of the 3 matches. So basically, we were pretty much matching, and her kidney was the best one for me. And because she was family and it was a live donor. So those were benefits to me. Like, she basically is saving my life. So we go back, and I have to go to Baylor. I have to get tested. I have to schedule what my transplant should be, or they're working on my schedule. They have to go in and see, okay, these are the matches, but is she a good candidate for this transplant? Like, they sit down and they like go in and have this meeting and say, these are candidates for transplant. This is what's going to happen. Are they good candidates? Is everything good? Let me look at the labs. Let me look at these, the biopsies, the MRIs, the scans, every single thing they have to look at, and they're looking at in order to determine, when are we going to put them there? Do they have everything we need? Is this the best process and match, or is this going to work? And it's a process that can last a few weeks to go through that, a few months to go through that, to years. And I think also there was a slowdown because my aunt had some, I think it was like benign cysts on her kidney. And so, because I only needed one, you can function with one kidney. And so there was a lot, so they were also ruminating over whether they should go with that or not, or is this going to be a problem? Is this going to be an issue for me later on? Is this going to mess with the actual functioning? They were going through every single scenario of what could work, what could not work, what's the issue, and if this is right for me. And as I'm doing that and going through all these lab tests and going to all these other places where they teach me about what a transplant looks like. So when you get a transplant, everybody thinks like, oh, they're taking out your old kidneys and putting in a new one. No. They leave those little suckers back there, and you get a new one. They put it right there in your little hip bone pelvic pocket. So basically, right next to my bladder is my new kidney. And if I needed another one, they would put it over in the other pocket. And it was just, and they would take, and then they also showed us, what they would do with my aunt, how they're not going to like really cut her open. It was more of a laparoscopic kind of thing where they basically like take these little, like, what's the word, like Tetris paddles? I don't know. Like, and not Tetris, but what's that game? I forgot the game's name. But it would basically be like it has a long stick and there's like maybe a little bit of a paddle at the end, and they would take it and they would cut just little slits, like one right here, one right there, and like maybe one right here. And they would put them in and they would snip, and then laparoscopically just be like pop, pop. They would, oh, you can't really see my hands. They would like pop it down, pop it down, pop it down. And since she had like a hysterectomy, I think, scar, they used that same scar. She asked them to use it. They would pop, pop, pop it down, and then bring it out of that scar. When I tell you the new technology, and that was 12 years ago, it was crazy how they were going to do it. And I was like, laparoscopically? I was like, So there was a lot of things I learned as a patient. There was a lot of things that I had to go through as a patient. Even before getting the transplant, I had to change my whole diet. I had to I could no longer eat. Since your kidney, basically like your functioning system, which is the glomeruli, which is my system, wasn't working properly and wasn't filtrating things out, it would basically like filtrate out things that I needed. It would remove those, and the things that I didn't need it or had access to, it would keep. So like potassium and phosphate, you need those things. So, but you need a certain level within your body, and your kidney is going to basically get a lot of those out. So I had to take meds. One was a phosphate binder to bind the phosphate to basically get it out in my system and get it out through my stool. I took another one, which was a potassium one to decrease the potassium within my body, because I couldn't eat ice cream. I couldn't eat cantaloupe, bananas, potatoes. There was a lot of things that were healthy and good for me that I could no longer really eat. So I had to eat very differently. My doctor, my nephrologist in New Orleans, actually even gave me a Native American like cookbook that was it helped people with diabetes and those that were like basically had kidney disease, to help them eat properly and eat the right foods that would basically help to absorb the potassium. I could eat potatoes because I forgot you had to soak the potatoes so much so that it would basically take I forgot what it took out the potatoes, but it basically would bind all the potassium into that potato, and it would just basically soak that up in the potato and then would go out of your system. So those are things I had to change. I had to change so much. And some things I just didn't change. I decided to do, I wasn't, at times, I'm not going to lie, I wasn't the best patient. I didn't always just be like, I did everything exactly, like not eat. I ate bananas sometimes. I ate certain things because I loved those things. It was just I couldn't eat as much. And I had to be cautious because my body was no longer functioning the same. So after all this, they made an appointment originally July. So in mid-July, I was supposed to get like a transplant. And at this time I had finished school. I think I had told school already, I'm going to get a transplant during the summer. I'm going to get one in August, blah, 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 blah. I'll be back next year. This was my plan. I always got a plan. God's always like, your plan is not what's supposed to happen. Anyway, so I go, and July, we didn't have it, and it didn't come out in July. And so I was like, and I was still going back and forth to New Orleans. So I was like, I had come back. I was like, what? I was all like upset. I came back for this and this, that, this, and I can't have it. I was just so agitated and irritated, and it was just, I was ready for this to happen, but I could have been in a circumstance where it didn't happen. There were so many people I met that needed a transplant, and they had found people on love sites and stuff like that, on dating websites, and found that person and hoping that person would get a transplant. There were people waiting for years and on dialysis for years, and were just trying to get a transplant, or their live one didn't work for them, So I was honestly truly blessed in the situation I was, but I wasn't acting always the best. Out of my reactions weren't always the best because I was just in a stressed out, worn out situation, and I was just tired, and I just wasn't always. I didn't react the best. I was going through a lot. There was a lot of hormones going on through me. There was a lot of anxiety and worry going on in me. Like there were times I would just randomly be sitting places and find myself just tears rolling down my face. I was so much more emotional than I had ever been in my life. I'm not like a big crying person. Don't get me wrong. I was a crybaby when I was little, but I wasn't a big crier about everything else, like literal crier. And so I had just had, it was just a lot to go through in such a short period of time. So, I was freaking out because I'm like, what? And I was like, they're going to push back the date again. And they keep pushing back the date. And it was just like, and thank God I had somebody that was actually in there pushing things forward. Cousin Henry really, really helped to get the ball rolling in the right direction and get me what I needed. Because he was just the voice of reasoning. Because they were like, she's young, but yes, she's healthy. There's no other issues she has with her. Because I had no other real issues. I had no high blood pressure or anything, but because of this disease, I had high blood pressure issues, cholesterol issues. There was a whole lot more issues that were coming in. And so finally, the next date that they set was August 14th. So they set that date, and that date is actually my grandfather, or my mother's father, his 80th birthday. So I kind of knew when they set that date, I was like, all right, I think this is God saying, this is my date. This is when I'm supposed to get it. It was after my birthday, but but on my grandfather's birthday, who had been just kind of like a pillar in the family, especially on my mom's side of the family. So they set that date, and me and my aunt flew down here from Michigan, and she actually got a little room that was kind of like the hospital has these like apartments and little harbor house and little rooms that you can get. And she basically got up in there, and she got there earlier than I did, like probably 2 hours earlier. They started on her, and then they put me in the room and started on me. And of course, when you go through these appointments or any of that, if you're going through any other major surgery, you're going to get asked the same questions 50,000 times. And my mom was like, why do they keep asking the same questions? I'm like, because they don't want to give me somebody else's organ, or they don't want to give me the wrong surgery. Some people have gone in there for basic procedures and have gotten serious surgeries within hospitals. People have gotten organs taken out, and that wasn't even what they were going there for. Some people have gotten organs put in and they weren't going for that, or gotten a surgery and they were not there for just a simple day procedure that was not even a surgery, just maybe like a procedure to have a biopsy or something like that, and they're going to get something else. Things like that can happen. We are human. We are bound to make mistakes, especially if people aren't paying attention or aren't looking. So when they ask you your name, your phone number, all of that, they're going to ask you that 50 times because they want to make sure they have the right patient, that you're here for the right reason, and that they have you scheduled to basically do a transplant, or they have you scheduled to do that procedure. So, they asked 50,000 times, what are you here for? What's going on? What's your name? Date of birth? Everything else. Who's your doctor? They're going to ask you. I know it gets annoying, but don't get annoyed. That comes with this territory. And that comes with the territory of, I would rather them ask me those 50 questions than give me somebody else's organ. So you choose. So we go there that day, and it was a bit somber. It was a bit calm. And she goes in before me, then I go. And when I go, they're like, okay, so they were like, count backwards. And even when I'm on the table, they're like, what are you here? What's your name? I'm like, Renata Searles. What's your date of birth? Blah, 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 blah. What are you here for? To get a transplant, kidney transplant. And they're okay. And they're like, okay, like you're on the table and they're asking you this. And they look, even if they look at your bracelet, but they still going to ask you. And then they're like, okay, count backwards. I count backwards. I only get to 8. I'm like 10, 9, out. Out. Don't know what anesthesia is, but I was out. So probably about after 8 hours, surgery probably took about 5 to 8 hours. I came out and I was in the ICU. And within the ICU, I think my family was on there. They're like, "Hey, Renata, hey," and I'm like, "Hey," and I've only got one eye open because that's all the energy I had to like was to raise one eye because I'm like, oh, man, because it was a lot of, it was sore, it was sore, but it was like painful because they're cutting into like your abs because my scar. Let me see. I'll have to give you a picture of my scar. My scar was actually like, just like, it's basically cutting tissue and abs and cutting into that muscle. Not the way your muscle like basically connects and comes together. It's cutting into the muscle, just kind of like opposite and just cutting through it at the best way, whichever. So you're cut when you come out, it's pain. It's a lot of pain. I had never kind of felt that pain before really, but it's a lot of pain, but it was like really sore and just like I didn't want to move. It was hard to move because I was like, ugh. Any way I move, it was gonna be like, it hurt from here all the way to my back, and it was just like a really uncomfortable, really kind of uncomfortable. But they gave me morphine and they were like, every 6 minutes you can press the button. And when I tell you I only had that one eye, but I looked at that clock and every 6 minutes I was like, ksh. And I did that for a while and then I fell asleep and I would only wake up like one or two times. But I had my surgery, was it at 5? I was pretty much done and just out the rest of the day in the ICU because not everybody could come in there, but they allowed my family to come and just peek at me. They're like, hey, Renata. And so from there, like, I think the next day, I only used the morphine on the first day because I hit it because I was like, because it's the initial shock of just, I'm cutting into you in that pain right there. And after that, the next day, there was really I think even the next day or later that day, there was really no pain down there. I had a lot of, the next day, they actually make you, so I had the surgery, I was in the ICU, and then I think the middle of the next day, they make you get up and walk. They're like, all right, chop, chop, let's walk. I'm like, And so I get up and I just have to walk. I have to walk so many times a day around because it's like the way Baylor is done. Baylor, it looks like a square, but it's kind of like, it's square circular, kind of like a hexagon maybe, the way it's shaped in there. And so you're basically just walking on the floor and walking around and drinking plenty of water. And when I tell you, right after you notice a difference quickly. You notice a difference quickly. Because what I really wasn't paying attention to is my skin had changed, but I didn't really think, my skin had changed. I just thought the sun is hitting me, this, that, and this. But I got darker, and it wasn't because the sun was hitting me. I got darker because my skin was dying. That was a part of it. My skin was dying and cracked. I was shaving off skin every day. Every day I was shaving off dry skin, and I was like, why is my skin so dry? That was one sign. There was not enough nutrients or getting to my skin, and so basically there were parts of my body that were just slowly dying that I just didn't really pay attention to. And so the next day, like, they pump you full of, I got 120 milligrams of steroids before the surgery, and then they give you some after the surgery. And when I woke up, I wasn't really that chubby faced, but I woke up, my color was back, my energy was back. Like, I felt like immediately when I got up and they made me walk, I felt like a new person. Like, I was like, forget the morphine. I like threw that to the side, and like, well, I really didn't want it anymore. I wasn't in that much pain. It was a little pain, but it wasn't that much more pain. So basically they're having you walk around. They're basically wanting to look at your urine output, how much urine you're giving a day, because your kidneys should be, your one kidney that you get, most of the time it's 120, I think, milliliters per minute, but what's a one kidney, it's 60. So it's 60 per kidney. So my kidneys were at 60 milliliters per minute at that time, my one kidney that I had. So it was probably pretty high. And then also my my creatinine had gone to back up to like 1.2. And so then that's when I started on my transplant meds. And so that's when they get the ball rolling. So after that, my aunt, she had a little bit harder recovery just because, if you have two kidneys and you lose one, it can be a little bit more for your body to adjust and it can be a little bit wearing out. So she had a little bit harder adjustment. So from there, I stayed in the hospital probably like a week. And then after that, they want to see you every day, I think it is, for like a week. And then after that, it's 3 times a week. And you do that for a few months, for like a month or so. And then after probably about 6 weeks, they want to see you every, I think it was either every 2 weeks or something like that. And at that point, I was like, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't drive. I couldn't drive for 6 weeks. So I couldn't go anywhere, couldn't leave. I was just walking around my neighborhood. I was kind of bored. I was having a hard time with that too, because from going to always doing something to doing nothing, that was God making me be still, because I didn't know how to be still. I didn't know how to slow down. I was just going 100 miles an hour, just 100 miles. Forget it, 100 miles a minute. I was just gone. I was like the road runner, pew pew. So I had to learn to be chill, sit down, relax, enjoy my family. My brother had another baby, I think in September. Yes, beginning of September. My niece was born. So I was able to see that. I was able to watch my nephew, because my nephew was not feeling her. He was like, she's taking all of my attention. So he wasn't feeling that. So he was hanging with me a lot of times. So he would want to go to the park and I would just walk with him. So I was doing a lot of just relaxed recovery, which I was not used to. But I had to get used to it. I was trying to get back to New Orleans. I was at appointments trying to yell at the dean of students of College of Pharmacy. I was like, no, I'm coming back to school. He was like, nope, we're not going to let you back in. He was like, my father had a transplant. He was like, there could be complications. There could be this. There's not going to be complications with me because, this is all I had. I had no issues before. I had a genetic disease. I'm trying to make it. I just want to go back and do what I was doing and enjoy what I was enjoying, and I also didn't want to get caught up in. Basically, sometimes when you take a break, you can get caught up in that break and not go back. And I didn't know, if that was kind of me. I've more been a person. I've never really never really took a break. God made me take a break. So I had to sit out a year of school. So I think it was probably about after, I still had an apartment in New Orleans. I still had a lot of that. So probably about after 6 weeks, a little bit after the 6 weeks, mid-September, I still went back to New Orleans. I worked. I had basically pretty much fully recovered. Everything had been stable. I used my doctor in New Orleans to follow up with, Dr. Lowentrent, and I probably was his first patient to ever follow up with. But because the way he treated me in the care that he took, I know he was going to be, what is the word? Considerate, compassionate, and do what was best for me. And it was also going to be something to learn for him. So we both learned in that moment. And so I worked, and I may have taken a few classes so that I could, to try to keep myself on track. So I took a few classes. I think I took a photography class, and I took a black and white photography class. I actually loved that class, where I had to go do black and white photos, and I had to basically do my own, develop my own film. And then also I took a nutrition course for pharmacy. That was only elective I could take in pharmacy that they would allow me to take. So I did a few things, and I still worked, and I followed up with my doctor. After that, I didn't really have too many complications, but there was one time where I think it was probably a year in. This was it was probably could have been, I don't know, December or maybe the next year in February. I had an issue where my creatinine had spiked up, and my doctor was wondering why. And a lot of times with the tacrolimus, it can affect your levels as well. That's why you have to look at tacrolimus levels on a daily basis. And he was looking at them on a daily basis, but he was never, being new to this, it was never his, first thought. So he got input from another doctor, who was actually at Tulane, and he was like, yeah, he was like, we looked at it and it looks like your tacrolimus may be too high, so we're going to decrease your tacrolimus levels and watch you. And I had to like I had to sit out of work and stuff for a week. And when I tell you, I kind of like fought him. I was like, no, I don't want to do this. You're having me do all this and that and this and blah 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 and blah blah. Blah. And it was just, I'm just a mess of a patient. I'm just gonna be real. I'm one of those fighting patients. Like, no. So he fought with me then. He was like, nope, you're gonna do what I say. You're gonna do what I say. So I needed that sternness from him, and I appreciated that from him, because I was kind of being a brat. I'm just gonna be real. I was a brat. And it just taught me a lot of lessons, and I learned a lot of lessons. I learned a lot about patience. I learned about God's timing and knowing that He's in control at the end of the day, and it's not me. No matter what I think, no matter what my plan is, that at the end of the day, He's in control and He has a plan for your life. And it may not look like what you want it to look like, but it looks like what you need it to look like. And I learned so much about myself throughout that process. I learned so much about healthcare throughout that process, and knowing how to fight and advocate for myself and demand, and also being able to listen and be patient, and know that my healthcare provider was looking out for me, and when he's looking out for me and when they're not looking out for me. I had to learn how to be a patient myself within this process. It was just a lot of things that I had to learn to manage, and to learn one thing I really like: slow down. You're not gonna miss what's for you. You're not gonna miss it. It's gonna be right there. You're just being prepared for whatever you need to be prepared for. And it just taught me how to know, again, like to advocate for myself and know what's right for me and what's not. When something's right for me and when something's not, and know that God has always prepared me for every single one of these things. And it's been 12 years out. I've had this thing on August 14th. It was 12 years. It was a 12-year anniversary, and that in itself is a blessing, to be a healthy individual, and I have no real complications. I think I've had one biopsy, and that was just recently. I had a biopsy. They biopsied my new kidney. And that was probably just last year. And he was like, and the guy who biopsied my kidney, I was like, how often? He was like, people who get transplants, they get biopsies 3 and 4 times all the time. And he was like, once out of 11 or 12 years, that's not much, but still. So there's always going to be something with it. And I think my doctor almost wanted to get me a biopsy before, but that's when he found out it was really my tacrolimus levels. It wasn't my kidney. So there have been some scares, there's been some ups and downs, but I wouldn't change this I wouldn't change this at all in my life. This taught me so much. It taught me so much about healthcare, so much about myself, so much about God, and so much about plans that He has for me, and where I can go, and the power He has put in me, and the things that I could overcome and do and live through, and still tell the story and still help somebody else. Because every single encounter and every single thing is not for me. The things that have happened in my life and the things that I've learned is for me to share with you guys. And that is the point of this channel, to share my experiences as a healthcare professional, and the knowledge that I have, as well as I'm also a patient. So I'm not just a healthcare professional. I'm telling you from both trajectories, ways to look at it, and to help you find what works for you, because not everything is not for everybody, and everybody's not for everything. So this is to help you and guide you to find what works for you, what's the best way, what's the best doctor, what's the best option for you in all of these things that are going on and all that healthcare has to offer. So I want to thank you guys for your time. This is my first video, but it's going to be a little long because it's my story. It's been my life. It's been something that I've had to deal with for 12 years of my life now, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I thank God for the experience, and I thank God for the situation in my life. Thank you guys for your time, and I hope to see you on my next video. I think my next video will be a good little introductory, giving you maybe some little guidance and some basics that you probably already know, but other ways to think about some things. Thank you guys. Oh, don't forget to like, subscribe. There's going to be a whole lot more going on to this. There's a whole lot more information I have to give. There's a whole lot more things that I'm willing to give. Thank you guys.